West Indies Cricket, Caribbean Cricket Podcast. West Indies Cricket, Caribbean Cricket Podcast.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. I'm one half of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, Machel and Santokie Hewitt, and with me as ever is Father Santokie. Father, how you doing?
Yeah, Mash. You know what, Mash? I don't know what's been happening since I became a father. We planned to do an ODI series review, England, West Indies. It ended up being the Alzari Joseph cuss out where he walked off the pitch. We're looking at the test squad for Bangladesh. Ended up being the good Keshmoti, why is he playing Guyana, down bad Super League. And today we said, you know what, we'll do a Super 50 review, actually talk about cricket on the field. I got my stats ready. I was out here ready to talk about, Amir Jangu, Justin Graves. And then, the press release dropped about, an hour before recording. Much to the disappointment of Jamaica Mash and your people them, no champion has been crowned at Super 50. Breaking news, I repeat, this is not a mistake. No champion has been crowned at Super 50. We have seen a 3-week tournament and no one is lifting the trophy. No one is eating the food with the prize money. I don't know where that prize money is going to go. But the latest news is there's no champion crowned at Super 50. I'm going to go into the press release because obviously a lot of people have questions about this. So this is taken from the official Cricket West Indies press release. An anticlimactic conclusion to what has been an exciting and competitive Super 50 2024 has seen both finalists, Barbados Pride and Jamaica Scorpions, forfeiting the final. Consequently, Cricket West Indies has announced there is no champion for this year's competition. The tournament's organisers made the announcement following a heavy rain-affected match delay. With an initial scheduled start of 1 p.m. local time, scattered showers began at the ground around midday. That's the Brian Lara Cricket Academy in Trinidad, forcing the first delay to the start of proceedings. Match referee Rion King, in conjunction with the umpiring team, informed both teams that the latest possible start time was 6:17 p.m., at which point the game could be played as a 20-over match. According to the playing conditions applicable to the tournament, if no play was possible at all, or in the event of a tie, both teams would be declared co-winners of the tournament. However, never a dull day in West Indies cricket. Around 5:45, the officiating team determined the game could proceed at the latest possible start of 6:17 p.m. They informed the players of this, and the toss would be conducted at 6 p.m. Despite assurances from the umpire and match referee that the conditions were safe for play, both captains failed to be present for the toss, allowing time to elapse past the latest starting point. As a result, both teams failed to take the field, effectively refusing to play. This resulted in an unprecedented, never-before-seen double forfeit, with no champion being declared. Now, Mash, as I said, this press release dropped about an hour ago. Talk to me. Talk to me, Mash. It's a lot to take in.
Do you know what? This is one of those situations in West Indies cricket, and I want everybody. We get on with a lot of people behind the scenes in West Indies cricket, and when I say get on, I'm not talking like some friend business. I'm just talking about for all the people listening to this particular episode, and whether you're a long time follower, listener of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, or a recent kind of supporter, we are always respectful behind the scenes to people who are involved within West Indies cricket. So everything we're about to say in this episode, there's no malice intended. It's just, as we always do on this on our show, Santokie, we just ask the questions that need to be asked. And before we went live or recorded, I said to you, why did they put this press release out? And it's got to a point, Santokie, where I actually think that Cricket West Indies should consult us. I'm being deadly serious. I am being so serious. It's got to a point where I think they should consult us before they put out a press release and say, Machel, Santokie, what do you think people are going to say if they read this press release? What reactions do you think people will have if we put this press release out? And we can then tell them, boy, if you say that, it's likely that people ask the following questions. Santokie, when I read that press release, there's so many things that I wrote down that were wrong with it. But the first thing, and I think where we should start with it, is if you put out a press release which say the captains did not turn up for the toss. Let's just start there. Let's start with that. If you put out a press release and admit the captains did not turn up for the toss at 6 o'clock with play allegedly able to start at 6:17 at the latest. The most obvious thing people are going to say is, how did that happen? And if you don't address it in the press release, it makes your organization look stupid. You offered up the information, so you have to address it. You have to provide the answers. You can't just offer up the information. Everyone's holding a one laugh and busting up at it, and then there's no there's no answers as to why that happened. No one's looking to Barbados to give us answers. No one's looking to Jamaica Scorpions to give us answers. Everyone's looking to Cricket West Indies and saying, how did a situation unfold where two captains, both of them, not one, both of them failed to turn up? No answers provided. And now when world cricket hears the news, because we have a duty to put out the information, because you put out the information, so we're going to put out the information. And now everyone's holding one big laugh at West Indies cricket again. What on earth, Santokie? Let's start there. Yeah. Why put that out if you didn't have an answer for it?
Yeah, the whole point of press releases, essentially from a media point of view, is damage control. So you're essentially controlling the narrative, addressing sort of any queries people might have. As you said, Mash, this just leads us to more questions because we got two captains, so Raymond Reef for Barbados Pride and John Campbell for Jamaica Scorpions. What was the reason that they didn't show up for the toss? Obviously, we can put 2 and 2 together. Us as analysts can say, all right, cool, it was heavy rain. Maybe they thought the pitch was dangerous, or they didn't agree with the conditions. But that's not clarified in the press release. It's almost as if it's two separate topics. Oh, yeah, it was raining. There were delays. But also, the captains didn't show up. As if, like, was there a protest? What was going on? So that immediately offers big questions. Secondly, as you said, what... I'm trying to even process this even now, Mash. So, secondly, how can you just end it there, though, by just saying they didn't show up? It's a double forfeit. We're going to decide what to do. What were the conversation? Was there no conversation, no dialogue? What sort of happened? And you know what's mad, Mash? I went to bed last night about 11 p.m. UK time, and I was checking the scorecard. I saw on the Cricket West Indies website it said match abandoned without a ball bowled. I woke up in the morning, early morning, and I saw there was nothing on Cricket West Indies social media page to suggest, that there'd been a forfeit, or not forfeit, an abandonment. I expect to see pictures of both captains holding the trophy, shared fingers, what was alluded to. I saw nothing. That was when I started saying, hold on, something's going on here. So I even went back, man, just how bad it was, man. I went back to watch the live stream last night of the game. And Darren Ganga, literally at the end of the match, he's saying, okay, cool, there's been a rain delay. Oh, I've just been told the match is off because the captains have refused to come out. Therefore, nobody wins. And that was it. It just got... it just got... It went off script. It was like he just got told the breaking news for a headset, and he was like, what the hell? And then before any sort of analysis or explanation, the stream just cut. And I was like, what is going on here? West Indies is a big organisation. It's a big cricketing nation. This is looking like village cricket out here. I don't understand, Mash. And now, as you rightly said, we put the news out on social media. People are asking us questions, what's happened? What's gone on? Because this press release has just essentially opened up a whole load of other can of worms where people wondering what's going on. But firstly, Mash, before we get into the finer details, just your thoughts in terms of optics and how this reflects on the region. I mean, super bad. We'll get into it towards the end of the show. It was a mediocre tournament, if we're honest. This sort of culmination, as you said, it's not going to stay within the region. From a global perspective, it makes West Indies cricket look like a joke.
Yeah, we look like a joke thing. Now, I do want to give them, before I answer that question, I do want to give them some kind of due. At the end of the press release, they do say Cricket West Indies will review tournament regulations in light of the unprecedented situation of a double forfeit. Additional information will be shared following further consultation with stakeholders. Now, I'm assuming that Cricket West Indies will say, well, that's us telling everyone that, listen, this is unprecedented. We didn't see it coming. The captains have thrown us into a situation that we had no plan for. Now we need to go and speak to X and Y, Z and this cricket committee. Maybe there's disciplinary action to come. And that's cool. Start the press release with all of that stuff then. Santokie, that line I just read you is right at the bottom of the press release. Right at the bottom. Bear man ain't getting to the bottom of the press release to read that little part. And even then, it's not really answering anything. Are there sanctions to come for Barbados? Are there sanctions to come for Jamaica? Where were the teams? What do you what do you
And the
mean?
thing is,
What do you mean the captains did shot? Where was everyone? Were they at the hotel? Like,
no, they were. You know what? I saw it on the stream, Mash. They were all together. They were standing on the dugout. They were just laughing with each other. All the players, Barbados and Jamaica, they were there at the ground. That's what I mean. It wasn't like from the images I saw. It wasn't like no hostile thing where they were like, "Nah, we're not playing." It was like they were all just mingling with each other, and something had obviously. It was like they united together because something had gone on. And obviously, we know it's not just the captains. It wouldn't have been John Campbell independently saying, "Oh, you know what, guys, we're not playing this match, and I've had enough. We're gone." It would have been a whole team decision with management and that kind of thing. So, what made them come up with this unanimous decision? Was it related to the rain? Was it separate? Secondly, I guess if you're a fan or if you're a sponsor, CG United, you're looking at this thinking, "Hold on, I spent 3 weeks following this tournament." Possibly watching the games because it was on ESPN Caribbean, it was on YouTube for other people around the world. We know quite a few people that have been watching the games or following it, and there's no culmination. Why wasn't there a reserve day in the rules? That's not been clarified. Why wasn't there a reserve day? We know in England there's a reserve day for the list equivalent of the 50 over list day cup to be played the next day. Why wasn't there a reserve day? If it wasn't in the regulations, why wasn't a compromise? Because it's Saturday. I doubt the players will need to fly immediately on Sunday. You surely could have a reserve day on Sunday. If it was in the regulations that there's no reserve day, what were the reasons for this? It just makes the fans and, like I said, sponsors on a wider level feel like it's basically been a waste of time following this tournament because you see no culmination. And what's going to happen then for the rest of history for 2024? It's just going to be an asterisk next to the Super 50, like nobody won it because the captains didn't show up to the toss. I think the ramifications from this are quite far-reaching.
So I want to talk about the reserve day issue first, because that's actually, funnily enough, Santokie, when I found out that, because West Indies, in fairness, did put out through their media channels, right, there's been rain delay. The latest the match that we knew that early from like 1 o'clock. We knew the latest this match can start is 6:17. But the first thing I thought was, well, surely you've got a reserve day in place. It's the weekend. Yeah. No one's going to watch regardless. So you don't have to say anything like, oh, but what about the crowds? If we hold it the next day, what if people had tickets? No one in Trinidad was going to care to come watch that game. It's Barbados versus Jamaica. Respectfully, Trinidad weren't in the final. So you could easily have brought everyone back the next day and said, you know what, come, we go again. So that was a big issue for me. But that's not me saying react to it in the time. That's me saying that should have been a contingency regardless. So when they come out 2-3 months down the line and say, right here, following us speaking to all the stakeholders and gathering all the evidence together, this is what's the sanctions to follow and I also want to know, why was there no reserve day planned for? This is Trinidad, right? It's the end of rainy season, right? Or hurricane season. You mean to say that you didn't think that rain might have an impact? It had an impact throughout the tournament. So what? And then also what I'd want to say, Santokie, is I spoke to quite a few people who follow CCP and have followed us for a long time. So shout out Trini Werewolf and all the Trini posse that follow the podcast, etc. They said to me this today that they pretty much intimated that even when the rain eased off, they said it eased off about 4:30ish. But they were like, but they didn't say it stopped. They said it started to ease off. I'm assuming, or we have to assume, Santokie, that the players were like, this isn't safe to play. You can tell us it's safe to play, but it's not actually safe to play. And they probably made a decision as a two-team collective to say, we're not going out there in these unsafe conditions. It's been raining the whole time. And now you want us to go out there and run up and down on a wet field. But again, Santokie, we're assuming that no clarification has been given whatsoever. But the other thing I want you to touch on, Santokie, is prize money. So what happens now? The winners of this tournament were supposed to get 100 grand, was it US? And the runners up 50, right? 50,000. So if there's no champion, what's happening with the money then? And did the two teams say to themselves, "Can we split this 100,000 between us?" Like what? Where's the money going, Santokie? That's what I want to know.
Listen, 100K is a lot of money as well, and yeah, like you said, I think firstly what you said there, based on our assumptions, like I said, the optics of the fact that both teams were side by side laughing with each other by the boundary vote when the match was called off suggests that it was a unanimous decision. And secondly, Mash, like you said, the prize money, does this mean it's going to be given, you know, to maybe development of youth projects or something along those lines? Is it going to be equally distributed among the franchises? Will we know? Obviously, the Barbados Cricket Association president, Conde Riley, we know he's a very outspoken president. Will Jamaica and Barbados say, you know what, we made the final, we're entitled to the prize money here, we're the two best teams in the region, we need to get something. It's not our fault. If it was a case of the players didn't feel safe enough to play, which is what we're assuming at the moment, they could say, we were put in an unjust position, we still should get some sort of prize money or some sort of compensation. Like I said, I think the ramifications are going to stretch out, be far-reaching and go on and on, because there's a lot of different sort of aspects to it. So the prize money is another big thing. And again, Mash, like you said, it goes back to your original point. If you're going to wait pretty much 24 hours to drop a press release about this, at least make sure it's thorough and addresses all these points, because this press release reads as if it was done within 10 minutes of the decision made and they just wanted to get the news out. They had 24 hours to let it marinate, you know, soak in all the information, think about what the audience is going to want from this press release. And they haven't done that. It's been rushed and it's led us to answer more questions. So in regards to the prize money, I would guess, I mean, informed assumption here, I would guess the money wouldn't go to Jamaica and Barbados, because the argument would be they chose not to play. And ultimately that was their decision.
So what do they get? Do they get the semi-final money then? 25k for reaching the semi-final?
So this is the thing, because I guess that would depend on the review and whether, if Jamaica and Barbados are found to have unjustly refused to play the final, surely you're basically disqualified from the whole tournament in terms of your performances. However, if it's going to be an independent review and the adjudicator says, oh, listen, they had a claim, they had the right to say no, then that opens up another can of worms in terms of the prize money has to be distributed to them. So it's going to go down a complicated and messy route. And like I said, Mash, me and you both know the politics within the region across different territories and franchises. I mean, this ain't going to be we're dropping a statement, case done. This is going to be we're dropping a statement, appeal's going to be made, debate's going to be had, cuss-out's going to be had, probably some sort of legal proceedings as well. So this is chapter 1 of what's going to be a very long story.
Yeah, 100. Do you know what? And as you were saying that, do you know what's running through my head? Let's just say, argument's sake, that Jamaica and Barbados are in the wrong. Let's just, and this, what I'm about to say is to educate people, both inside, but more so outside of the region, as to the politics that happen in cricket in the region. Let's just say, Santokie, Jamaica and Barbados are in the wrong. Cricket West Indies, I would assume, have disciplinary protocols in place. Maybe not for a double forfeit, because in fact, in their press release, they say, in light of the unprecedented situation of a double forfeits, they probably don't have a protocol for a double forfeit. But let's just say at the end of this review and process, they're like, these two deliberately messed up the tournament and went into business for themselves. We have to hand out a punishment. An apt punishment may well be, boy, we're banning you from XYZ. But here's the thing. If the punishment is too strong, Santokie, Barbados and Jamaica will not vote for Kishore Shallow should he stand for re-election in 2020. I'm telling you, that's how it would work, Santokie. So even then, it's a really tricky ground of how to manage this situation, because men will hold a grudge. Associations will say, you can't do this to us, XYZ. So for people outside of the region in particular, it's not even as straightforward as saying, right, you two mash up the tournament, here's the punishment now you're going to hold, because it has a knock-on effect on anything you then try to get done in West Indies cricket. Maybe I'm wrong, Santokie, but based on how politics work in our region, that's even a next problem that might come.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think with the elections are pretty much 4 months away, there's going to be a lot of navigation and a lot of sensitive sort of maneuvering, I think is the right word, around all of these issues. And again, Mash, I think just going back to the point, this ain't even like a fake cup or nothing. It's not like even like CPL or Guyana Super League. This is the Super 50, running since 1972. Rowan Kanai, Clive Lloyd, Garfield Sobers played in the first edition.
Heritage.
It's actually one of the few things left we have in West Indies cricket that is a heritage, like for our modern history, and it's been done out like this. I hastily put together a press release saying, "Listen, John Campbell wasn't feeling it, he didn't want to come out."
In many ways, this sums up West Indies cricket in the modern era. In many ways, everything and anything that everyone's ever kind of scratched their head and said, but why? This almost sums up everything, really and truly. But like you say, Santokie, we'll wait to see now what comes of all of this. We may get a couple DMs from people saying, no, it weren't like that, and so on and so forth, which is fine. But we're here more to say this is what the optics look like outside of that. And I think if anything sums up the worth that Caribbean Cricket Podcast brings to the cricketing landscape in the Caribbean is we are probably the best at just talking about, irrespective of the actual story and what the full details are, this is what the optics look like. We'll always look at that before anything else. But Santokie, if we can, let's briefly consider the tournament itself. So obviously no champion at the end of it all. CCC and West Indies Academy ended in the bottom two, which was probably predicted, would have been predicted beforehand. Jamaica, probably the team that outdid any expectation, given how bad they've been in all formats of cricket since about 2022 or the end of 2022. Guyana, possibly a surprise that they didn't make the final four. Windward's performed worse probably than people expected, but you called it a mediocre tournament, Santokie, but there were some positives. I mean, Justin Graves set history and he's just scored a century. He's come off the back of that and scored a century in the first test against Bangladesh. So we can't be too down on it and say it didn't lead to anything positive. If anything, I'm sure Justin Graves will say, boy, Super 50 really gave me that extra platform to go and do what I've done in the first test. What do you make of the tournament, Santokie?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think whenever you have a 3-week tournament, there's going to be some positives. I think Justin Graves, Amir Jangu, who we'll get onto, obviously, will come out and say, listen, I had a good run of 7, 8, 50 over games. It's put me in the right position to make a claim for the West Indies ODI side. Justin Graves, we've seen him carry on that form in Test cricket, maiden century yesterday against Bangladesh. So there have been benefits. I just think overall, if you were watching this and this was a premier 50 over competition and you were watching it West Indies, you would think some of the play was atrocious. As much as we saw some positive play, there were some down bad moments and games. You talked there about Guyana. I think after watching the first 2 games, it wasn't a surprise to me that they didn't make the top 4 because they were down bad. I mean, admittedly, they had the likes of Hetmeyer, Rutherford, Romario, Shepherd, Shamar, Joseph, Moti all out. So you essentially saw, Tejnavan Chanderpaul and Matthew Nandu opening in a 50 over game, which is never going to work. In a 4-day game, yeah, but in 50 over, no. Guyana as well, just touching on there, because obviously I followed more of their games probably than other teams. Just that lack of strike bowler, Niall Smith was our only strike bowler. Rosford Beaton didn't show up for the fitness test, so he wasn't in the side. Like I said, Shamar Joseph was missing. Kevin Sinclair got sent home. It was never clarified why he got sent home, but then we saw him pop up as a substitute fielder yesterday for West Indies against Bangladesh. So a lot of things there. And I think, to be honest, Mash, I think also we were lucky enough that in 2021 and 2022, the majority of West Indies internationals played in Super 50. So 2021, I remember Pollard, Narayan, Hetmeyer, all those guys played. This year, it was just unlucky that, West Indies international commitments, and then we saw later on Abu Dhabi T10 took a lot of players. So we essentially saw this was a tournament for the best of the rest. It wasn't the premier West Indian cricketers, and I think it reflected that. There were ups, there were downs. I would still say overall it was a mediocre tournament to watch, both batting and bowling wise. But like you said, there are positives to talk about. We aren't going to be too down bad on it because, like I said, it is what it is with the players available. So let's talk about Amir Jangu, because he was the top run scorer, 446 runs, averaged 89 for Trinidad and Tobago, fell short in the semi-finals. But Mash, Amir Jangu, someone, we've been talking about him for a while. He's someone who has always shown promise, but never had that breakthrough where you're like, all right, cool. He's done enough to kind of make the step up. He had a good first-class season. He's built upon that in Super 50 for Trinidad and Tobago. Is it time? He's 27 years old. Did you see enough in Super 50 of Jangu, enough consistency to say, listen, he should get a call-up on the international level?
Well, it goes back to that age-old thing for me, which is that if you're not calling up players based on domestic tournament, and Jangu has every right to say he's followed up this Super 50 performance follows up a good first-class season that he also had for Trinidad and Tobago. So if you're not going to pick players when they're consistently in the top 5, top 3, top 4 of run scorers in domestic competitions, what is the point of the competition? Now, Justin Graves has essentially had 3 tournaments in a row, Super 50, West Indies Championship, Super 50, where he's consistently been at in the right margins in terms of performance, and he's been called up and he's performed when he's got this call up now, right? So Django has every right to say, what about me? And for me, it's not as simplistic as saying, but who does he replace? It's just about put him in there in the conversation, in the same way how Jewel Andrew gets a call up for being a promising youth man. There's no reason why Django can't be part of a 15-man squad if somebody drops out for personal reasons or whatever it is. And then you look at Django and say, well, you're the next taxi on the rank. In the same way how Desmond Haynes refused to call up Darren Bravo last year, and that caused a big furore. You can't then ignore Django as well. Like you have to reward performance. So I expect to see Django in a some squad. I don't know which version of cricket, but I expect him to see him in a wider West Indies squad at some point in the near future. But as for anybody else outside of that, I didn't really see anything else from any of the batters that had me thinking, yeah, you know, and I expect to see you soon. Or I mean, John Campbell was back, which I think is important. He scored 278 runs in his 7 matches, average of 40. And interestingly for Campbell, he was the only person in the top 15 who had a strike rate over 100.
100, yeah.
So, and we have to be mindful of a lot of these players that we're talking about, their strike rates. I mean, Justin Graves was 98. So he was second behind Campbell in that top 15. Lots of them were talking about strike rates in the 80s and 70s. Like, we already got Shea Hope. We already got Casey Carty and Shea Hope. So that's not good enough. You're going to have to do better than being strike rates in the 80s.
Yeah, I was literally going to say, I think John Campbell's got a probably higher, based on stats, higher than you'd think chance of getting a recall for West Indies, just because I think he was of an international standard. And then the ban happened, and he's come back, and like you said, in his first professional cricket since coming back from the ban, he's gone at over 100 strike rate, been one of the top scorers in Super 50. So there could be a very real possibility they say, you know what, based on his history as an international cat, we know he's someone who can do it at an international level. Maybe not in ODI cricket, but he's someone who has made the step up to international cricket. And he's shown signs of development, because you could argue him coming off a 2-year ban, he's never going to be top run scorer going at 130 strike rate, because it's hard to make that adjustment. So the fact he's on the upward trajectory straight away suggests they could say that come into the fold. ODIs, you know, Sammy he has got the record opening partnership with Shea Hope for in ODI cricket, so see someone that could come in. But I agree generally, Mash. I think other than that, there's not really anyone. I mean, Lenico Boucher had a good season for Barbados, 351 runs. Sunil Ambrose, Keon Otley as well in the top 5, but they're 2 players who you feel their time has passed in terms of West Indies recall. They're not really looking like that. But other than that, Mash, it's slim pickings. I mean, Kevin Wickham and Matthew Nandu showed some promise, but again, for youngsters, there was inconsistent. It's not enough to say, all right, cool, they're ready to make the next level. You'd imagine they'd have to go again. The only problem is, as we've talked about a lot of times before, in terms of going again in 50 over cricket, you got to wait a whole another year to play 7 games. So that's the problem.
And actually, that's important. And this is why, looking at someone like a Graves and a Django, this is why in West Indies cricket, you haven't got time to stake your claim by performing every 12 months. You have to put back to back. You have to go Super 50, West Indies Championship, Super 50. You can't see it as, I'm just going to wait a year. Anything can happen in a year. You've got to perform in any single competition that comes your way. Graves has, and that's why he's in the West Indies squad. So the kind of challenge and expectation is clear to everyone else. But Santokie, I did a video, I can't remember if it was episode, I don't remember if it was yesterday, or I can't even remember, it must have been yesterday. But one person who did perform and always performs Santokie is Rahkeem Cornwall. Yeah. And I'll be honest, I did the video knowing that enough uncles would go, nah. I did it on purpose. But the point is, I actually was also being serious. So Rahkeem Cornwall ends the tournament, Santokie, with the top wicket taker, as he always often is in the first class championship. 23 wickets at 12 apiece, economy 4.2. There's no chance he'll ever get a West Indies call-up in white ball cricket. But if we're going to say that Django deserves a call-up, how comes it don't apply to Rahkeem?
I think it's like what you elaborated on your episode yesterday, Mash. Is a lot of people can't get the optics of Rahkeem Cornwall's size, basically. As in, and you don't know whether that spreads to Cricket West Indies in terms of the selection policy. I think that's always going to be an obstacle. And you're always going to have the narrative of, I know in all cricket, well, particularly in West Indies cricket, we see like, poor fielding and that kind of thing. Whereas I think with Jimbo, if it's poor fielding, it'd be down to, he's overweight. That's what happens when you pick someone who's overweight, kind of thing. So I agree. I think we'll regularly see Jimbo top the wicket taking charts in red ball and 50 over cricket year on year because he's too good at a domestic level. I just don't think we'll ever see him play international cricket. It's something we've talked about a lot of times. I just think it's the optics match. I just think there's not, especially with the highly, like the run out in CPL, for instance, the amount of damage that did for his kind of credibility, kind of will always hinder him. So I just don't think we'll see Rahkeem Cornwall. It's a shame because he is a good cricketer. We saw when he was in the test side, especially at slips, what a good fielder he was. And, performances like when we got that historic away win in Bangladesh in 2021, we saw what pivotal role he played. So he's someone who can play international cricket. I just don't think we'll see him. And then if we go to Marquino Midley, Mash. So Marquino Midley, I haven't seen this guy since that Australia tour when he bowled about 2 overs and then got injured. Marquino Midley's come in second on the wicket taken chart, I should say, and Yannick Correa at third. With Marquino Midley, let's just touch on that first, Mash. Is he someone you can see getting into the West Indies white ball setup? Obviously, we're in need of pacers in 50 over cricket. Is he an option at this point?
Has to be. And to be fair, with both my Jamaica hat on and without my Jamaica hat on, people have to remember that before that Australia tour, Marquino got called up because he was literally on the verge of a call up anyway. He was at the time seen as, he'd been so consistent in domestic cricket that he was very much seen as he is the next option after like an Anderson Phillip. We're going to Marquino Midley. I may have the other way, might have that actually the wrong way round, but Midley at the time when he went to Australia deserved his chance. Obviously broke down. He's pretty much had a lot of injury woes since then. He looks like he's back to his best now, and you just alluded to why I think he will get a chance, simply because Sammy has made it clear that they're searching for another pacer. In white ball cricket, particularly 50 over cricket, they've got what? Probably Alzari Joseph, Romario Shepherd, and Matthew Ford. Yes, Shamar's just made his debut, but they know that they lack consistency when it comes to regular white ball options. So I don't see why Marquino wouldn't get a chance in this upcoming Bangladesh tour. So I'm expecting them I'm expecting Marquino to be in a squad, if not the Bangladesh one very, very soon. So I think he's got a chance. But then, I mean, I heard you call Yannick. I mean, if you look at the top 11 wicket takers in the tournament, the 8 of them were spinners, Santokie. So you always have to be careful with highlighting spinners because we know that year after year, competition after competition, spinners are going to dominate the top wicket taking chart. So it's very hard to look at any spinner. This is why I called Jimbo, because he was so far ahead of everybody else. But you look at Yannick and you're like, yeah, but we've seen you at international level. Like, and Hayden Walsh was 10th. We've seen you at international level. Jamel Warrican, maybe Jamel Warrican's worth a go, but obviously he's in the test team right now. Then you got Javar Royal, Kari Pierre, Romario Greaves, Brad Barnes, and you're just looking at it going, no. So, and this fits your thing again about down bad tournament, because respectfully, Brad Barnes for Jamaica took 10 wickets at 25 apiece. Brad Barnes ain't supposed to be taking 10 wickets. Respectfully to Brad Barnes. Like, I saw him against, who did they beat in the semi-final? Leeward Islands. And he was just floating the ball up. And I was like, he ain't even doing anything special, and he just bowling man down. So we have to be very careful when we analyze spinners in our competitions.
And we've seen it time and time again. Remember that year when Andre McCarthy for Jamaica turned into Brian Mumley and
took a hat trick.
Got a hat trick. Mad. But a Super 50 heritage. But Mash, if we look at I guess two sort of bright spots in terms of the bowling, Jediah Blades, I think, is one to watch out for the West Indies Academy. Bowled really well. A puzzling one for me, Mash, is Rahkeem Jordan. So he was, what is he, 5th leading wicket taker? Yeah, 5th leading wicket taker, 14 wickets. Now, it's bizarre to me because he obviously got a call up for the England tour for the 3rd test, was in the squad, didn't play. Then he got a deal with Kent, played 2 matches. I commentated on one of the matches, and the Kent setup was really impressed with him. He took 6 wickets in one match. So he had that impressive build-up. And then it comes to Super 50, and he's playing for CCC. Now, I get that, obviously, CCC, they have to have experience. They generally go with a veteran captain. So we've seen, Shane Dulwich, Danish Ramdin in the past. For me, it seemed like a waste of talent to have Rahkeem Jordan in the CCC setup. Bearing in mind, he's just come off an England tour, got a stint in county cricket, which is rare for West Indian cricketers. Surely he would have, I don't know what the situation is with Barbados or what's going on. Surely he would have been better served playing for a quote-unquote bigger side, just to kind of highlight his abilities, because he did take a 5-wicket haul in his last match against Leeward Islands, who were the semi-finalists. So Rahkeem Jordan is someone, again, a pace option, came in the top 5, but I just feel we could have used his talent better by putting him in a different franchise for this tournament.
Yeah, I'd love to know where Rahkeem Jordan's name is in West Indies selectors' depth chart, both in the white ball and in red ball, because I just see him as someone, his name's always mentioned, but he never gets a run. Yeah. So he'll forever just perform, and you're like, well, is he international standard or is he not? And as you said, he got a county deal. There's plenty of other bowlers who are apparently, according to our selectors, better than him. They ain't getting no county deal. So where is Rahkeem Jordan in this, in our depth chart planning? And so, say, for example, I just said to you, oh, Marquino Minley should get a call up, right? Should he be getting a call up ahead of someone like Rahkeem Jordan? Technically, no, because Rahkeem Jordan's been on the cusp of the side already, and technically, as you say, was called up to England ahead of someone like a Marquino Minley. So it's hard to answer that one, Santokie. Marquino has more pace than Rahkeem, so that's why I'd put Marquino ahead of Rahkeem. But maybe they just don't think that Rahkeem is quick enough for international standard. Maybe he'll just always be that guy that they don't think quite has the pace that's needed, and he's more a swing bowler who needs conditions to be in his favor. I don't know, Santokie. I've no idea.
Yeah, it's bizarre to me. I mean, this could be a whole episode in itself, but if you look at the Barbados sort of setup, we had Jay McAllister last year, who was kind of on the cusp of a West Indies call up. We haven't seen him play. Well, I think he played Super 50 last year for Barbados, but I haven't heard his name. Obviously got Rahkeem Jordan playing for CCC. Then you got the likes of, Shamar Holder, Keon Harding. It's like there's a lot of fast bowlers being produced in Barbados. We're just not seeing any sort of development. They sort of just go off the radar. So I'm wondering if it's what the setup is or what the reason is. Because as I said, Rahkeem Jordan should have been playing for Barbados in Super 50, realistically, bearing in mind his status and how you would assume he's on the cusp of or close enough to a West Indies selection, certainly more than a lot of other bowlers in the tournament. So that was one puzzling thing for me, but I agree. I think Minley, it wouldn't surprise me if he gets called up for the ODI series against Bangladesh. I think Justin Graves, especially with what he done against Bangladesh in the test, he'll definitely be a call up in the ODI setup. We might see Amir Jangu, but other than that, I don't think there was enough promise shown in Super 50 for us to see massive changes going into the next ODI series.
Yeah, and I think ultimately, and I think it's the last thing we'll just say here, if you're a player or anybody connected to any of the franchise setups in the region, my advice is very, very simple. You have to produce in the West Indies Championship. That starts early January or late January and goes through until late April, early May, right? You have to produce. It's not enough to say, oh, I had a good Super 50. It was a mediocre tournament that didn't really show us enough difference. Yes, people say, oh, Mash, there was more hundreds. Okay, yeah, cool. But we're talking about the eye test as well. So for you to come into the conversation, Justin Graves is now your benchmark. You have to produce competition after competition after competition. Unless you're Rahkeem Cornwall, you'll never get picked. So you have to produce regularly in order to really be in conversation. One tournament's not enough. So I think that's it for me, Santokie, in terms of what this year's Super 50 really showed us. I'm sure there'll be people, get us in the comments below as ever. Let us know what you think. I'm sure you're going to say there's somebody we missed out, and there'll be the odd person here or there, Santokie, who showed us bits in in like one match here and there, but we can't look at it like that. It's got to be consistent performance. It has to be. It's not enough anymore to say, but this man bowled well in this one game against XYZ. Did they do it consistently? If you can't do it consistently at domestic level, you definitely ain't doing it consistently at international level. It's as simple as that.
I think one thing I'd like to see going forward next year, I know obviously we're scheduling, it's hard, but try to have Super 50 outside of at least white ball commitments for West Indies. So at least we can get some nucleus of players, because there's no context unless you're playing the best in the region. You don't know how good. It's all well people hitting 100, but if you're hitting 100 against, CCC or West Indies Academy, for instance, or even a down bad Guyana, what does it reflect? Whereas if you're up against West Indies international players like a Jaden Seals, Anderson Phillip, Shamar Joseph, for instance, at least it gives some sort of context. So I'd like to see that going forward. However, I know obviously with administrators, it's often hard with the increasingly condensed schedule to get that in. But I think that would massively benefit the tournament, because we have seen 2021 and 2022 the benefits of having the nucleus of international players playing in Super 50.
One last thing, a challenge for somebody in the comments below. Can somebody tell us who were the top 5 run scorers and wicket takers if you remove all performances against West Indies Academy and CCC? Oh, yeah. And that might sound harsh, Santokie, but I'm intrigued because they were the bottom 2. And with respect to West Indies Academy, this was the weakest iteration of West Indies Academy we've seen so far in terms of a set of players where you're like, they're clearly not ready yet. Whereas before, you've had men like Kevin Wickham and Kevlon Anderson and them man where you're like, you can see that they're kind of ready for the step up. This year's batch, I was like, you man need about 3 seasons or 2, whatever it is to get up to levels, if you see what I mean. And CCC obviously were down bad. So I just want to see how strong people were outside of those 2 teams. But that's for somebody to go do the work for us.
I mean, I think if we're being honest, CCC and West Indies Academy are development teams. I would argue in Super 50 there should be a rule going forward that the points you score against those 2 sides don't count. You just have them as development side, like in football.
I hear you though. I hear you.
No, but in football, like if you look in like Spain and stuff, Barcelona will have a B team in Division 2 or 3. The points don't count. They're just there. They can't get relegated or promoted. It's just there to develop the young players, but also they're not weighted as equal to the other teams in the league, which I think is fair enough, because you could hit big score against CCC. Doesn't really reflect much because the development side is not equal to hitting 100 against Barbados or Leeward Islands, for instance. And I think that weighting could be applied. Like it wouldn't be too derogatory to CCC or West Indies Academy. I think it's a development process, and that would be part of it. So, yeah, Mash, as you said, it's a forgettable tournament. We're not going to be talking about it in years to come. There have been some positives, and I think it will have a small impact on West Indies selections, at least in the immediate future. But forever, we will remember this tournament as the tournament with no champion. So just to clarify once again, because I need to say it out loud just so I can process this. Super 50 this year, after 3 weeks of following it, we've been following the down bad scores, tuning into streams at all hours of the day. Mash was so close, Jamaica Scorpions had their hands on the trophy. It's the ghost tournament because there is no champion. I repeat, there has been no champion crowned for Super 50. And with that, Mash, I think we have to end on that. No, actually, comment, like, subscribe as always. Caribbean Cricket Podcast, we're always out here with objective views. I know people will always argue with us. We'll get a lot of DMs after this. But we tell it how it is from the perspective of the fans. As we always said, our motto from day one, by the fans, for the fans, okay? And that's how we always keep it. So follow us, Instagram, TikTok, X, Discord, Patreon,
Blue
Facebook,
Sky.
Blue Sky. Well, Blue Sky as well,
Everywhere. Just type in Caribbean Cricket Podcast into Google, people, and you can find us. Listen, we're out. It's been a long episode, to be fair, but never a dull day in West Indies cricket. We'll be back very, very soon. See you all soon, people.
West Indies Cricket, Caribbean Cricket Podcast.